Alright everyone, Dave here with another exciting tutorial, and I want to show you how I did this wet paint effect on this brick wall. Okay, I can see that the wall is missing some bricks. I can see that the paint is wet, but only where it says wet paint and tutorial. It also looks like the bricks are kind of slightly sticking up as well. And what's cool about this is if I press 5, I can see that it's on a single polygon. Okay, so I only have one single polygon, but if I press 6 for textures, I can see that, and if I press 7 for lighting, there's kind of a lot of complexities that go into this. So I'm going to walk you through step by step how to do this. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm just going to go to New Scene, don't save. And the first thing I'm going to do is just go File, Project Window, and I'm going to click on New, and I'm going to call this My Bricks. And I'm going to go to the folder here, and I'm just going to save it on the desktop. Okay, there we go. Select. And I'm going to hit Accept, and that's it. So I got it set up. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and I have some folders here. Okay, this is kind of a preview of what's coming. I'm just going to go ahead and open up a file here. So here's some bricks right here. Okay, and now this is just basically my simple color of bricks, and we'll start with that. So I'm going to go File, Save Scene As, and I'm just going to save this into My Bricks. Okay, into Source Images, and I'm going to call this brick underscore color. Save it as a JPEG. Okay, great. Now I feel like if I go back to Maya, I'm going to go to Create Polygon Plane. I'm going to scale this up to the size of the grid. And then over here, I'm going to click on Polyplane 1 and set this to 1 and 1. If you don't see this, you can make sure that you click on this icon over here, and this is the channel box. Okay, great. Now I'm going to press J as I turn this, and it should snap, and now it's sitting up 90 degrees, and this is one polygon. Okay, now to add a material to this, I'm going to right click and hold over the object, assign favorite material, and I'm going to choose Blend. Okay, and the reason that I'm choosing Blend is because I want some things to be shiny. And if you want things to be shiny, I think of bling. It's kind of easy to remember. Bling and blend sound similar. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Blend. And now here it is. Okay, there's this far tab over here called Blend, and I'm just going to name this brick underscore material. Now, if I attach the color to this, I can see here's color. If I go here, I'm going to go to File, and then I'm going to click on this folder, and I'm going to go to brick color. Now, I don't see it here. I have to press 6 on the keyboard. There it is. Okay. Now, if I look at this, I feel like, especially when I move and you can kind of see the lighting over it, I feel like it feels like a flat sticker. Okay. Even if this was a photograph of bricks, it might look photoreal, but when I start to move around, the illusion is broken. Once again, it just looks like a flat sticker. So let's fix that. Our first step is to make this look three-dimensional. So I'm going to go in here, and I want to create a black and white image where black is going to be pushed in and white is going to stick up. So think about like snow-capped mountains and valleys. The snow-capped white part is going to stick up, and the dark valleys are going to be pushed in. So in this case, I would want the bricks to be white and the cement to be black. Now, I'm going to do that by just double clicking on this layer, and I'm going to just duplicate this layer. So I'm going to bring it down here to duplicate it. And now I'm going to go ahead and adjust this. So an easy way to do this is Image, Adjustments, and then I'm going to choose black and white. Now I'm going to bring my red slider down, and my yellow slider, maybe my yellow slider down as well. Actually, that looks pretty good. Okay. Now, depending on the image, you might have to kind of do a little bit more, tricks with it. I could also do things like this, maybe brightness, contrast. Okay, and you can see that, there we go. Actually, that looks pretty good. Okay, so I've got white border. Now, that's the opposite of what I want. So when I'm initially getting that, I don't really care if it's black or white. But at the end, now I care. I definitely want the white bricks to stick up. So I'm going to hit Control I, like invert, and I have this. You'll notice that there's some things here. I don't really care. That might kind of give it some good character anyway. I'll just go ahead and leave that. And I'm going to save this. I'm going to go File, Save As. And now I'm going to save it as a JPEG. And I'm going to name this brick underscore bump. Okay, for bump map. And you'll see why in a second. So now if I go back to Maya, I'm going to click on my object. And it should bring the material attribute editor up. If not, I'm just going to go down here to material attributes. And now I'm going to go down to bump mapping. And once again, you can see that it looks flat like a sticker now. But as soon as I go to bump mapping, I'm going to click on this. And I'm going to go to File. And here you can see it says Use as a bump. And for the bump value, I'm going to click on this. And I'm going to go find my bump, my brick bump. Okay, cool. Now I can see that when I move this, it looks like it's slightly sticking up. Okay. Now if I, once again, if I go here, if I want to adjust that kind of that depth of how far it's sticking up, I can right click on the word bump mapping and go to this first one. It's kind of weird. It says bump 2D 1 out normal. And if I click on that, now I can change this slider here. And you can see that that'll invert it or bring it up. I find 0.124, I don't know, it's kind of the magic number for me. I like that. Okay, now when I rotate this around, it looks like the bricks are sticking up a little bit. Okay. And to get a cooler kind of effect here, what I could do is I could go to Create, Lights, Point Light, and then I can, you can see that this came in the center here, and I can bring this up, and if I press 7, I can see that now when I rotate this around, I can definitely see this illusion of depth. Okay, for example, like if we focus on this brick here, I can see how it's highlighted on this side, but if I push the light over here, now I can see that that brick is highlighted on that side and shadowed on this side. So you can see that the lighting, especially when the lighting moves, it really gives this illusion of depth. And that's happening strictly because of the bump map. And the bump map is saying that where things are white, they're going to stick up, and where it's black, it's going to be pushed in. Now, if I right click on here, go to Material Attributes, what would happen if we took off the color? Okay, so if I ever want to remove a file, I can click on the word color, the title, and I can go to break connection. Now that's what it looks like without any color information. So that's strictly the bump map. So that's kind of interesting. It almost looks like it's modeled, right? It looks three-dimensional. And when I move this, I can kind of see what that's looking like. So sometimes it's easier to see the effect of these maps when you take off the color. Okay, the color is going to look cool, but I feel like sometimes it's easier to see the effect without the color on there. But I'm going to go ahead and put the color back on. So I'm going to go here, and now I'm going to put the color back on. Okay, great. And I can see that when I move this light around, it's kind of equally shiny throughout. And what I want is I want that shine to only be where the paint is and not where anything else is. Obviously, I don't have any paint on there yet, but how am I going to do that? In other words, how am I going to kind of localize where it's wet or where it's shiny and have it not shiny on other areas? So let's kind of talk about that. So if I come back here, I'm going to kind of turn off this layer. So I'm going to double click on this. I'm going to call this color. I'm going to call this one bump. Okay. And now I'm going to create a type layer, and I'm going to put it on some kind of graffiti or some wet paint. So what I did was I just went to defont.com and I typed in drip up here. And then I got some cool kind of dripping fonts. And what I did was I found this one here, a dripping marker. And I downloaded it. And once it downloaded, then I just went down here and typed in font. Then I simply dragged that, that font in here. So I'll show you. So when I downloaded it, here it is, a dripping marker. It might come zipped like this. I just right clicked and went to extract here. And when I click on extract here, it should show up. Okay, if it doesn't, I'm just going to go to this one, extract to, and then this one, and it's going to create a folder. And it says that hey, there's a folder already created. So it's going to look like this then. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab this and drag it into this area. And I already have it in there, and then it'll just install that font. So now what I can do is I should have access to that font in Photoshop. So if I go to my type right here, now I can type, okay, I'm going to say wet paint. And the way that I would select that font is right here. Okay, so here's a dripping marker. You can see it's the first one. I also found this cool graffiti one too. Okay, but I'm just going to go with this wet paint one. And I'm going to type in wet paint. And then down here, I'm just going to type in tutorial. Okay, that looks cool. And now I'm going to figure out what color I want this to be. So I'm going to say, you know what? I want to use, I don't know, blue paint. I might turn this off to see what looks good together. You know what? Maybe a darker paint. Okay, I kind of like that. Kind of this dark, this dark color, and then maybe. Okay, yeah, this one's black, that one's like that, whatever it is. Okay, now you might say, well, wait, the color information changed, and yes, it did. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go like this. I'm going to say File, Save As, and I'm going to save it as a JPEG, and I'm going to save this as Brick Color 2. Okay, because if we ever want to come back to just the simple bricks, we could. I'm just going to call this Brick Color 2. Now if I go back into Maya, okay, and now I can click on this, right click, go to Material Attributes, and then back here, I can see that this is where I put the color on. So if I go here, and if I say, you know what, I want to update this, I'm going to go to this folder, and I'm going to say Brick Color 2. Open. And now there's my new color information. But it doesn't really look like wet paint. And the reason is because it looks like it's all equal. Like it's not shiny where it is shiny where the paint is, but it's shiny everywhere the wall is. Okay, so I want to make it just shiny where the paint is. And if I go back, once again, if I go back to the brick material, what's responsible for the shine is the specular color. So you can see that when I have 100% specular, it's really shiny. Okay, and if I have 0% specular, it's very flat. There is no shine whatsoever. So I want some places to be shiny and some parts to not be shiny. Okay, and by the way, if you don't have this slider down here, make sure that your type right here is set to blend. Okay, if it's set to Lambert, it's not going to have this specular area down here. Okay, great. Now that we know that this is going to control it, we have to make a map for it. Okay, when I say a map, that just means that we have to create a Photoshop file that has black and white information. And you guessed it, I want it to be 100% white, or I want it to be really shiny, and I want it to be 100% black, where I don't want there to be shine at all. So how do I do that? Well, let's go back into Photoshop. Now I'm going to say, I'm going to, I want wet paint sign, once again, to be, I'm going to select this, and I'm just going to tell this to be white. And I'm going to select this one, and I'm going to tell this one to be white as well. Because what I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, that's where I want it to be shiny. And guess what? On the brick, I'm going to just click on here, make a new layer, and I'm going to fill this with solid black. Because on the bricks, I don't care if it's the cement or the brick. I'm not thinking about anything other than, is it shiny or is it not shiny? And where it's shiny, I want it to be white. And where it's not shiny, I want it to be black. And by the way, if I did kind of gray, okay, so if I did any shade of gray, it would be a percentage of shine. So here I'm just doing 100% shine or 0% shine. So now I'm going to save this. I'm going to go File, Save As. I'm going to go to JPEG. And I'm going to call this Brick. And I'm going to call this Specular. Whoop. Okay, great. Brick, Specular, Save. Now, if I come back here, once again, if I move the slider, it's just going to affect the entire thing. But if I do the map, it's going to say, hey, where the map is white, it's going to be like this. And where the map is black, it's going to be like that. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on there. Brick, Specular. Aha! That's our trick. Because now you can see that if I select this, now it's only shiny where the wet paint is, and it's not shiny where the bricks are, giving the illusion that that's wet paint. Okay? And kind of like what we said before, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to right click, go to Material Attributes. Let's see what this looks like if I take off the color. So once again, if I go to Color and Break Connection, aha, look at that's what it looks like. So without any color information whatsoever, I can see that we have the bump map, which makes the bricks stick out, feel like they're truly bricks, three-dimensional. And I have this kind of this wet paint feel that, depending on how the light's picking it up, you can see that it feels like it's wet paint. And if I add the color back on, so I can click on it and I can see here, always the furthest right tab is going to be my material. I can go ahead and add that color back. There it is. Okay, great. Now, what if I want some bricks missing? Okay, well, if I click on this, you'll see that on a different slider is transparency. And I can bring this all the way down and bring this back up. Now, I might be saying, well, why isn't this really transparent? Well, it's because it's still picking up the specular highlights of that. So I would have to, if I brought the specular highlights down, then we wouldn't see that. So think about like a balloon. If you blew up a clear balloon, you could still see through it, but you would see like the shine, the reflection of the environment. That's kind of what we're seeing here. Okay, but if I bring this all the way back, there's zero transparency. So I want to have transparency where I want to get rid of some bricks, but I want most of the bricks to be visible. So let's go back and take a look at that. I'm going to go ahead and hide. Well, I'm going to keep that on so I can kind of see where it is. And then I'm going to just have another layer. And I'm going to call this one Specular. And then I'm going to make a new layer. And I'm going to call this one Transparency. Okay. And on this one, I'm going to paint black and white. So I'm going to paint black where I want there to be no bricks visible, and I want to paint white where I want the bricks to be visible. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my paintbrush. I want to make sure that my hardness is set to 100. I'm going to make sure that I have black, and I'm going to just kind of maybe hold down Shift, and I can see that I can lock this into a nice straight edge. And I'm just going to kind of get some of these bricks out of here. Okay. Oh. And once again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, we're just trying to get something for a concept here. Okay, there we go. So it's going to look like all of these bricks are missing. Okay, and then maybe I want some bricks missing over here. So once again, And I want to make sure that I really go to the edge there. And what if I want a brick missing in the middle? Like maybe down here. Whoop. And then once again, if I hold down shift, I'm going to kind of keep a straight line. There we go. Yeah, let's say something like that. Okay, now I can't just save this as a transparency, because then some of the wall would be transparent and it would be kind of weird. I need to think 100% transparency or not. So I'm just going to simply create a white layer, 100% white, underneath this. Okay, that's truly what my transparency should really look like, because I have black where I want it to be transparent and I have white where I want it to be visible. So now I'm going to go like this, save as. I'm going to save it as a JPEG, and I'm going to call this brick transparency. So brick trans JPEG, save. Now if I go back to Maya, I can, you guessed it, I'm going to add that file to transparency. So if I click on this, I'm going to go back to File, and then I'm going to click on Brick Trans, open this up, and now you can see that where I painted black, it's gone. And where it's white, it's visible. So now you can see that the wall is kind of taken away, and I have this cool, you know, it looks like wet paint. It looks like three-dimensional bricks, and it looks like some bricks are missing. So hopefully that was helpful. And before I let you go, I just want to point out that there's a lot of other stuff in here. Okay, and stuff like even like glow intensity. Okay, so if you wanted parts of it to glow, you guessed it, you would just have to paint white where you want it to glow and black where you don't want it to glow. And if you figured out, like, once again, where it's reflective, if you want it to be reflective in only some areas, you could paint white where you want it to be reflective and black where you don't want it to be reflective. So in other words, all of these, after color, all of these work with a black and white mask that we're doing in Photoshop. So I want you to think in terms of just that aspect of it. Am I painting transparency? Now I have to think fully on that. Or am I painting specular? In other words, the shine? Or am I painting, bump mapping? And then I'm going to think black and white of peaks and valleys. So you can really do a lot with this. And let me just remind you that if I press 5, it just shows the raw model. This is one single polygon. If I press 6, or if I press 7, 7 is lighting, now I can see that one single polygon has a lot of cool stuff with it. So once again, hopefully that was helpful. If it was, make sure that you like and subscribe. If you have any questions, please put that in the questions below, and I'll get back to you right away. All right, thanks and happy modeling.